Welcome to the May meeting for the Progressive Democrats of Howard County. And this is actually a pretty special meeting for us in that it is our first ever endorsement meeting. We are almost exactly a year old as an organization now. I believe we formed in May or June of last year, although we didn't start doing public meetings until September of last year. But almost a year since we've been around as an official entity. And this is the first election cycle that we've been around for. So our very first candidate endorsement meeting. So thank you to all the candidates who came tonight, who've been coming and been supporting the club, who submitted your questionnaires, even if you do not ultimately get our endorsement. But yeah, a year, man, time went by. And in addition to the endorsement stuff hearing from the candidates, we also are excited to hear a presentation from Erica Keynes from the Black Alliance for Peace, which is, a group very focused on sort of foreign policy and international solidarity. So I'm excited to hear from them. Moving on to the next slide here. Let me make sure. Let me see if Erica. Yes, Erica is on. Okay. So we've got, if we could go to slide 3 there with the social media stuff. Yes, if you'd like to follow us on our social media pages, sign up for our email list, become a dues paying member, all that stuff. Please go on our link tree. It has links to everything, our podcast, our YouTube channel. It's linktr.ee/Hoco Progressives. I'm putting it in the chat right now. Okay, that's okay, Steve. All right. So yeah, follow us, become a dues paying member. And speaking of dues, if we could go to number 4 here. Just general stuff, including due stuff is, in general, we have our monthly meetings on the last day of the month, or the last Monday of the month, I should say. This one was a little bit different because it was our endorsement meeting. We wanted to do it sooner rather than later to make a bigger impact in the election. So today, that's why it's but next month we're going back to last Monday of the month. So Monday, June 27th, 7 p.m. is current plan on Zoom again. Again, sign up for our email list. You can do that on our website too, hocoprogressives.com. And to be able to vote in our endorsement meeting tonight, you of course had to have become a dues paying member at least 2 weeks in advance of the meeting, or at least been voted in by existing PDHC members 2 weeks in advance. So I guess that would be May 2nd. But even if you weren't able to pay dues in time or become a member in time, if you want to become a member for future meetings and be able to vote on other things that we vote on, dues are $36 for a year-long membership for just you, $50 for a +1 membership that can cover you and one other Howard County resident. You do not have to be a registered Democrat to be a member of this club. You also do not have to be a registered Democrat to receive the endorsement of this club if you're a candidate. If you have trouble, paying the dues, we do offer a 3 to 6 month due waiver if needed.
Let me just, you were down.
Hey, Lori, would you be able to mute yourself, please?
Sorry.
No worries. So in terms of, why might you want to become a member? What might we be doing? It's very important now with election season coming up with our endorsement vote tonight. I want us both during the primary and the general to, really hit the ground running for these candidates, do a lot of door knocking, actually make a tangible impact in a lot of these elections. So, if we're going to be doing a lot of door knocking for the candidates that we endorse. So people are interested in sort of joining onto a field or canvassing committee. We'd love help with that. Or just helping our candidates in general. We have an international solidarity committee, and that sort of relates to the focus of Black Alliance for Peace as well. or if you're interested in any outreach events, these are all sort of things that we could use help with from our membership. So in terms of how to actually pay dues, if we could please go to the next slide there. So to pay dues, we did have this other thing called Wild Apricot that you could like just pay with your credit card online. It was very simple, but our free trial ran out. We might explore a similar service called Join It that is a little bit cheaper. I don't know if that will allow people to pay online with credit card. We got to look at it more. But in the meantime, we're back to Venmo if you want to pay digitally. And if Join It does not work out, we will likely, create a Cash App account as well, just to have multiple ways for people to, pay dues. And then also you can mail a check the old-fashioned way to 6801 Oak Hall Lane, P.O. Box number 6523 in Columbia, Maryland. And then, again, it is a two-step membership process. Not only do you have to pay dues, but you also have to be voted in by a majority of existing members at a particular PDHC meeting. It doesn't matter what order those steps are done, but they both have to be done. So moving on, I guess, to the treasurer's report. So in terms of where we're at financially, we raised a little bit of money this month, and we also spent a little bit of money. That was mainly through where we spent the money on was the Indian Cultural Association had a festival we promoted at the last meeting, and we had a no developer donation campaign pledge table there. And PDHC, it was like $250 for the table, and PDHC paid the full 250, but we also tabled with three of the other organizations that were co-sponsoring the pledge, which was HCCA, the Howard County Citizens Association, People's Voice, and Our Revolution Howard County. And although we paid the full 250, each of those groups is reimbursing us for their portion of the cost. So it'll really only cost us $62.50 in the end, but we are still waiting on those reimbursement checks. And then we had a couple new memberships. So we've got $1,327.82 in the bank, as well as $315.19 in our Venmo. And so what is that? That's a total of over $1,600 on hand. So we're looking pretty healthy in terms of our finances. Of course, we still, if people want to donate extra money, so that's another way I think we can help our endorsed candidates, is either direct donations to them or, just spending money independently to support them in whatever way we may determine appropriate. But in terms of the new member voting, I think, which is on the next slide here, I think we've got actually three people, but we'll save the next one for next month because she just submitted it like within an hour of this meeting, and she said she wasn't able to make it this meeting but wants to be in next ones. But in terms of who did this in the short term, who we can vote on right now, that is Joan Pontius and Michael Phillips. Looks like neither of them are unfortunately here today, but I think a lot of us are pretty familiar with Joan Pontius. She's running for county council in District 5. In fact, a lot of us attended her campaign kickoff meeting yesterday, and we are going to, I actually have something in the slideshow later on about that. But Joan Pontius running for District 5. Michael Phillips is somebody I met through the same group that I met or became aware of Black Alliance for Peace through, actually. And that was, I think Michael's involved with Friends of Latin America. And we hosted the town hall, the virtual town hall a couple months ago on raising awareness about, some deadly sanctions that the U.S. is putting against Nicaragua and potential election interference that they were involved, the U.S. was involved with. And yeah, so Michael was interested in our group through there, and then I guess just in the last day or two, he decided to submit his interest for membership. So the only reason I go into detail is because, again, they're not here to kind of speak for themselves. But I guess I'll go ahead and motion.
Jay, I sent my dues last night to Venmo.
Okay, yeah, I saw, and I had you on the membership list because I believe we voted you in as a member in January. But you didn't actually pay the dues until yesterday. But we did already vote you in, so you are a member. You've done both steps, so thank you for that, Mel.
Okay.
But yeah, so I guess I'll motion in support of voting on Joan Pontius as a member. Do I have a second?
I second it. Jake, I second it.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And is there any discussion?
I'd like to have a little word with you. Yesterday when I met her, and then she explained her position and everything, then I wanted to have a little side discussion, and then I told her that, since you would like to get a lot of support, I can definitely arrange a meeting with people from the mosque next to her house very much. And they are very influential people, and I can arrange. Then she said that she made a lot of complaint against mosque. And she said that I'm not, I don't know how did I reconcile. I made some complaint to the mosque, and then a lot of people were offended our position, because there's the freedom of religion. Nobody wants to bother anybody. Whoever wants to worship peacefully, everybody has a right. So I just wanted to want some clarification her position, something like that. When Jew had some issues, we needed a clarification of her position. I want to hear from Joan Pontius that what is her position that she was against the mosque.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. And I remember you mentioned that to me yesterday at her campaign kickoff event, and then you ended up leaving. But I did actually talk to Joan about that and ask her, what her sort of issue was. And I do wish that she was here right now to sort of speak on it. But from my understanding is she doesn't have a thing against mosques in general, but it was instead the mosque, for those who don't know, is literally like kind of like right next to her house. It's not like she's in the same city as a mosque. It's like right bordering her, and her complaint was not, oh, that there's a mosque next to my house, but something of like the specific zoning was approved for like no lights or a certain type of lighting, and she's saying that the type of lighting that they're using is in violation of that, and it's too bright, and she has a horse farm, and that it like keeps her horses awake, or she can't see her horses because of the glare or something like that. And so people are free to disagree with that. I understand if people disagree with that, but I don't think it was that it was a principled objection to mosques or
But can she explain to all of us?
And Mel, when she was talking about it yesterday, she said that she and the neighbors were, or most of the neighbors at least, the ones that were there, were in favor of the mosque going in, because they thought that there wasn't a mosque in Western Howard County, and they thought it was a great thing. Though I think the only thing she was talking about was just the light issue that kind of goes into her property or something.
I mean, I don't know how about you. One thing I felt that she was talking about, then another thing about like about her, it's my point of view that she is less tolerant for other people. Like somebody was coming for a dog breeding or somebody's house, if a lot of car goes by. What's the deal of that? If somebody has a business in the dogs, and everybody has a right to do some business, from their home. What is the?
Hey, Mo, this is Karen. I actually was listening when she was talking about that. So what she was talking about is that a person was going to be having a doggy daycare business in the bottom of a house that they were in the lower level of a house that they were renting out. And I don't know, like if you were paying attention when you drove up the street, it's more like a driveway than an actual roadway. There's just enough room for 2 cars to pass. And they were worried about the amount of traffic that would be coming. They were not opposed to this person having a business at all. What they had an issue with was the amount of traffic and the noise with the dogs being out. So that was their issue. That was her and the neighbor's issue about that person having a business in the bottom of their house. She's not anti-business.
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that if we bring someone in the council member and that person become less tolerant of a lot of people, if they cannot accommodate, it shows that has a less patience. That's all I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, Mo, I was there too yesterday, and just to add to what was shared, and I appreciate your concern in terms of, perhaps, you don't want a council member lacking, tolerance. I can tell you that based on what, council member David Youngman, his history, I think he falls in that squarely in that category of, lacking tolerance on a lot of issues, from the Liberty Act, from a lot of these other, issues that, that we care about, and specifically on zoning and land use. I think, he's not really good there. And, what I thought was, based on my, my discussion with her, she seems to be, I think a stickler for the rules. And, I think when it comes to, that's what we're lacking in Howard County is, council members who are okay with just lack of accountability. I think it was sort of refreshing to hear that. And there's probably, some things to be clarified with her and, perhaps the mosque in terms of, the ordinance, the county ordinance that, that's in place, and perhaps that may not be followed. So all of that I think probably is worth clarifying, but I didn't get the sense that she, is, perhaps intolerant or anything like that. I think it was just more of, some perhaps, disagreement on, what the ordinance is, and, something to work out on. And, I think it was good to me that she knew the rules and she wanted it to be followed. So, but we can give her a chance to talk about those issues, as she's campaigning. But I suffice to say, I don't know if after talking with her through that, I think your concerns would be allayed, I think.
I told her exactly that. Would you like to reassess your position, that what you say there were mosques? And she kind of, I thought that I wanted to give a chance, and she didn't want to go further. I said that, would you like to, I can arrange a meeting with some board members of the mosque if you are really, and then I can bridge the gap, that I want someone who wants to go for a public office. Yes, I might have said something, let's have a little discussion, let's have a word, so we can be kind of like come to the middle point, And if that's not the attitude, then I have some little problem of that person. I don't want to hold back what in the past, but at least moving forward, if you don't want to, like Drew came to the meeting and he explained what he did in before, but his view is not same. Similar way, we'll have to hold the standard that way. If that is a standard for Drew, why would it not be a standard for others?
Absolutely. I think Joan's not here tonight, right? So maybe we can, Jake, is it possible for us to vote on her membership next month?
Yeah, we can.
When she can talk through these issues?
Yeah, we can. Good idea. We'll table this we'll table this for now. I guess I have to motion for. a
I'll,
table.
you motion, I'll second.
Yeah, okay. I motion that we
Is it-
table.
I mean, is it necessary? Is there anybody other than Mo that has these concerns?
I think but I think Modner deserves to get his
Yeah.
his questions answered for the discussion. I mean, that's the purpose of discussion.
Yeah, a lot of us, weren't there yesterday, so probably give people a chance to like do their, investigating, I suppose.
Okay,
Yeah, okay, so we'll take, I'll motion that we table the vote on Joan Pontius membership.
Yeah, until she can be here next month. I second.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion before we do yay or nay?
You should just vote, or unless there's no objections, because it's not something you would discuss, because it's a motion to move the agenda.
Okay, I see. All right. Well, then all in favor say aye.
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 Okay. All opposed say nay. Okay. All right. So then next, so we have Michael Phillips, who I spoke about earlier, Friends of Latin America guy. I guess I'll start with any discussion. No. Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Okay. The motion carries. Michael Phillips will be a PDHC member upon dues payments. And yeah, Karen, if you could please take some sort of note somewhere that Joan was tabled, Michael passed. Thank you. And sorry, I'm trying to wait for her to finish doing the note there. Okay, cool. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And then, okay, so in terms of upcoming events, so we have tomorrow from 6:30 to 8 p.m. an in-person Howard County Council Candidate Forum hosted by the Smarter Growth Alliance, Indivisible, Howard County, and some other organizations. That'll be at the Elkridge Public Library in my neck of the woods. So I'll try to attend that if I can. It'd be nice if we could get a question asked about the No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge. In terms of other events, this Thursday, for people if they're undecided in the Attorney General and Comptroller's race, Columbia Democratic Club has a virtual forum this Thursday at 7 p.m. Next Tuesday, Carrie, the Community Allies for Rainbow Youth, I believe is the acronym, sort of like a LGBT solidarity organization, but specifically like, trying to be there for like students and young LGBT people for the most part. And they have a meeting or like a virtual presentation on fostering LGBTQ plus inclusion with a presenter named Ace Schwartz. And then Saturday, June 4th, there's something called Savage Fest in the neighborhood of Savage. And the HOCO for Us slate, HOCO for Us Democratic Central Committee slate, I believe will have a table there. That's at 9035 Baltimore Street in Savage, Maryland. Later, or it looks like I forgot to delete an event there, the African American Coalition of Howard County. Disregard that 5th event, that already happened. But the 6th event there, the National Poor People's Campaign, they've been doing a sort of months long, maybe even years long, like march, I think, across the country in their National Poor People's Campaign moral revival, I think, or something like that. But they've been marching all across the country, all to finish their march in Washington, D.C. So that would be, next month, Saturday, June 18th, 2022. at 9 a.m. So those are some of the upcoming events before our next meeting on June 27th.
Hey,
So,
TJ, you
yes,
said that, but you guys rescheduled from June 4th to June 9th? Or am I wrong? I saw
What?
some,
for Savage Fest.
yeah,
Yeah, so June 4th is Savage Fest. That's not our event. That's like the town of Savage is putting on, and then we, Hoco for Us Slate, is getting a table there. The June 9th thing that I think you're talking about, which I was debating putting on here, but I decided not to, is Ion Hoco, Indian Origin Network of Howard County, I believe, is planning to host a meet and greet for the Hoco for Us Democratic Central Committee slate. So these are two different events.
oh,
But I just hadn't put the June 9th Ion Hoco one up because we haven't advertised it publicly yet. But
okay, but I saw that in the calendar, I added that for June 9th.
yes, June 9th. Yep, you're right. So so those are the upcoming events. I hope people can make it. In terms of what we've done since the last meeting, if we could please go to the next slide there. Slide number 9. Let's see. Yes, there we go. Okay, thank you. So yesterday, where all that stuff that Mo was just talking about, where most of that happened, was at Joan Pontius's county council campaign. She's the sole Democrat running for county council against a pretty far right wing Republican, the sole Republican on our county council. And you want to talk about not being welcoming to the local Muslim community. I mean, I think that this guy who represents District 5, where the mosque is, he was pretty vehemently not in favor of that being there, that being expanded in any sort of way. Again, it's unfortunate Joan was not here to speak more on that, but so we checked it out just because she is the sole Democrat, and she's trying to participate in the Citizens Election Fund, meaning she's not able to take any business or LLC or PAC donations. She's completely grassroots funded, and in order to qualify for matching public funds, she has to get donations from 125 different county residents by June 4th of this year in order to qualify. So that's like 2 weeks away, basically 3 weeks away. And she's not there quite yet. She still has a way to go. But if people are interested in checking out her campaign, checking out her candidacy, and interested in donating to help her hit that CEF qualification mark, you can check out our website at joanpontius.com. And we've done other things since then too, but we've spent enough time so we can move on. But if we could go to the next slide, please. Some updates about the No Developer Donation Campaign pledge. In terms of new updates, we now have a 4th Board of Education candidate who has signed on to the pledge. I believe she is on here, and that is Monique Richards. Yes, Monique Richards is on here. Thank you, Monique. She joins Board of Education candidates Meg Ricks, Lin Fang Chen, and Julie Hotopp as fellow signers of this pledge. So that's 4 of the 8 Board of Ed candidates who have signed this pledge. So that's great. District 4 incumbent county council Democrat Deb Jung also signed the pledge at the Indian Cultural Association Festival, where we had a pledge table at. So we've now had 2 out of 5 of the incumbent county council members sign the No Developer Donation Campaign pledge. So that's great. The entire Hoco for Us Democratic Central Committee slate, which I am the chair of, and many people on this call are also part of. Looks like Francis just tried to sign on as a central committee candidate as well. Gave him an error, so we will look into fixing that, but would love to have you sign on as a candidate. But yes, the Hoco for Us slate, 17 member slate, voted not a single vote against joining the no developer donation campaign pledge. The opposing slate still has not signed it, unfortunately, though they're more than welcome to. And last but not least, in terms of the pledge, is we have not set the date for this officially, but we've reached out to, we've reached out to all the different candidates, many of them who are on tonight, and told them we are planning, us and the other co-sponsoring organizations are planning to host a meet and greet event / fundraiser. We're going to encourage people to donate to them as well. But a meet and greet event for the no developer donation campaign pledge candidates. And that's going to be sometime in late May or early June. We want to do it before the CEF qualification deadline of June 4th or even on June 4th. So we will put out the information on that when it's finalized. But if we could go to the next slide here, please. Thank you.
Before you move on, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the participants aware of the fact that we have one candidate for county executive that has signed the pledge as well.
Yes, and that is you, Harry Dunbar. You are our first, to my memory, you were the first candidate for the first Howard County candidate in any office to sign this pledge. So thank you for being a leader in that fashion. And, don't you worry, you are on our endorsement list. You are the only candidate currently on our endorsement list. So I wish you the best of luck. And we, I should have said this up front, but all the candidates who are here will have a chance to speak to the group before we cast our vote in just a little bit. So thank you for that, though, Harry, and thank you to all the other candidates who are on tonight. Okay, so before we get to the endorsement stuff, though, and I'm sorry, Erica, that we started a little bit, we got to this a little bit later than I was expecting us to. So I want to introduce Erica Kane, who I believe is the Baltimore coordinator for the group Black Alliance for Peace, which I'll let her speak more in detail about what they're all about. But very interesting group. Again, we worked with them in the past on different international solidarity efforts, mainly the the no sanctions on Nicaragua town hall. So got some information here about their group, and she's gonna speak to us. And Eric, I understand you said you had a video that you wanted us to play at some point. So we've got the video up here, queued up, ready to go. Just let us know when you want us to play it, and we'll get that started for you. But thank you. And I see you got a Ujima.
Yeah, I'm also a member of Ujima as well. So thank you all for having me. I do want to say that first and foremost, I am appreciative of being invited into this space. My name is Erica Keynes. I am, of course, a Black Alliance for Peace member. I am the coordinator for Black Alliance for Peace in Baltimore, as well as the co-coordinator for the Haiti and the Americas committee, which is how we cross paths with Friends of Latin America. My organization and them as well do a lot of solidarity trips, a lot of actions around Haiti last year, and Cuba especially. So that's just a brief rundown of who I am. Oh yeah, and I currently reside in Odenton. So I'm not in Howard County, but I do have family out there in Long Reach and Oakland Mills. So I'm very familiar with the county, but I live in Anne Arundel. So as noted, the Black Alliance for Peace, I am a member of. It's a organization, or rather an alliance of individual members and organizations. So like I said, I'm also a member of Ujima, but Ujima People's Progress Party is, as an organization, a part of Black Alliance for Peace. So the purpose of this organization is to recenter and recapture the Black radical traditions of the anti-imperialist and revolutionary internationalism. So when we talk about the civil rights movement, when we talk about the Black Power movement, one through line has always been international solidarity and anti-imperialism. We talk about Dr. King and his Vietnam speech. He makes it very clear about where the civil rights movement stood in perspective of war. They were very anti-war. We look at members of the Black Panther Party or even SNCC. We know that they were anti-Zionists. They were probably one of the first sects of groups to call out Israel, full stop. So what we do as an organization is we're trying to recapture that. So our approach is by building unity from the bottom up and enhancing the capacities of existing organizations, while also providing an organizational home for emerging Black radicals, so individual members. So when I talk about being an internationalist group, our focuses right now are on the 800 plus military bases that are covering the globe. The US has split up the entire world into military commands. So we have the Indo-Pacific Command, which is around the China Sea. We know about the CENTCOM, which is in the Middle East. AFRICOM, which is one of the main things that we deal with because we are Africans. So we deal intentionally with AFRICOM. SOUTHCOM deals with the region that Friends of Latin America obviously deals with the Central and South America, as well as the Caribbean. But what we do is not just deal with those military commands, but bring them back in. We connect them, right? We understand ourselves as colonized people within the US. We understand our communities as colonized communities. Because when we look at Western colonies, right, we understand that they are stunted politically, economically, and their self-determination is also stunted. And that is a mirror image of working class and poor communities of colonized people, Black and brown. We see those exact same sort of restrictions. So when we see a use of over military on the continent, we will see a use of over policing in our communities. These things are connected. So much so that in the Department of Defense, they have the 1033 program. And I'm not sure if folks are familiar with what the 1033 program is, but it is a program, it's a Department of Defense program that allows for the surplus of military grade weapons and tanks and all kinds of things to local police departments are allowed to apply for those things. So they're allowed to get a budget for those things and apply to have them. So we looked at Ferguson, and you've seen all of those military grade weapon tanks and weapons, and folks wondering, where did all that come from? The 1033 program. When we looked at what happened after Freddie Gray and the Baltimore uprising, and we seen them same tanks on our street, where did those things come from? The 1033 program. We also know the 1033 program is in Morgan State, in Coppin State, and the University of Maryland just ended theirs in 2020. So even universities have access to these surplus of military grade weapons. And for what purpose, right? So it's said to combat the war on drugs and the war on crime, not dissimilar to why the military is in Africa, why the military is in the Middle East, right? Defending the war against terrorism, right? It's the same sort of language, the same sort of rhetoric. So we try to connect all of these issues. So our campaign currently is End the War on African Black People here and abroad, which includes shutting down the 800 bases, which includes the push to end sanctions, which includes demilitarizing our police, and even moving towards abolition of police. But we also have a clarity that you cannot just abolish police, right? That is a process. That means challenging the state. So we have to challenge the state that allows for this type of policing that we are coming encounter with, especially as we have a governor that is running around promising to fund the police. He's going town by town, press conference by press conference, promising to refund a police department that was never defunded. So that is just a brief synopsis of what Black Alliance for Peace is. I can maybe answer a few questions before you show the video, because I would like to conclude with that.
I see Kiana's got a question.
Hi.
Hi.
So let's see if you saw my question in the chat, because I'm interested in like a more quote unquote radical movement. Well, especially on the ground organizing, especially, and I was wondering first to like if you'd be interested in like contact. So I've been meaning to want to get in touch and help out in that sense.
Yeah, I'll share my information.
Sure. Wait, yes?
Yes.
All right. All right.
And
I put it in the chat for you.
And then I guess the
Eric-
second,
go ahead.
sorry, there was a second one.
Okay.
This is out of curiosity, but I lobbied through FCNL, the George Floyd Act, and I've been, wanting to find out if this is true. Was there increased police spending in that bill? Was there like an amendment, if you happen to know?
In the George Floyd Act?
Yep.
Well, I know the amendment was for things that were already illegal in most states that they went ahead and pushed through, like the choking and all of that. Since Eric are in New York, that's been sort of pushed back. So I'm not sure about the budgeting for that act, if they slipped it in there. I do know that the budgets for policing increased in the beginning of the first quarter of his presidency last year by 20%. That was the increase of the federal policing, because I know that in 2020, a lot of politicians tried to angle policing as only municipal. So you would have to deal with the funding locally. But BAP understands the 1033 program is a federal bill. So is Operation Relentless Pursuit, which Trump was able to pass in his final year, which allows for a budget for federal policing in about 7 cities, including Baltimore, Detroit, Albuquerque, Cleveland. I can't remember all 7 at the top of my head. But yeah, so there's an increase of federal funding in policing. So I'm not sure, like it's been a steady increase. And we also know that Biden ran on that to increase the police budget, to increase it by 10 million. So I'm not sure how much the act itself deterred from that or contributed to that. But I do know outside of the act, they have been funding the police continuously.
Yeah, I figured that much. Wouldn't be surprised if it was in there though.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question and answer. Joy Jenkins asked in the chat, did you hear Mark Lamont Hill on the Breakfast Club talking about abolishing the police and what that looks like for America? I guess called reimagining policing.
Yeah, I did happen to catch Professor Hill speaking about it. But yeah, that's along the lines of how, because the thing about the abolition movement is that somewhere along the line, it got co-opted, right? So there was no real clarity on what folks meant by abolishing the police, right? Even abolishing the jails. But I think where Mark Lamont Hill recenters it is fixating on the state, right? If we are not challenging the state directly, then we can't necessarily abolish the police thing, right? Because the police are very much a part of the state. They are interwoven into the state. We understand police exist to protect the ruling class and private property, not so much people. So as long as they're embedded in the state and the state is not being challenged, then abolishing the police is not really, it's more rhetoric than actual possibility. So in order to establish that, we talk about liberated zones, we talk about community control of policing, where there's more self-determination within communities. Like communities will have a say in how they are protected. And with that say, there'll be a less and less need for the actual police outside of the community, if that makes sense. But like Mark was explaining, these things are processes that have to be built towards. So it's not one day we're going to wake up and say, abolish the police, and like next week it's accomplished. It's the same with running political parties and such. We know that these are processes that we have to build. And the first step of that is getting people to understand what it is we're asking for, especially when the comment retort is, but what about all the bad people, right? So we have to really get people to reimagine what even is a bad person. How do we understand criminality? How is that defined? Who defines it? And then what are the other avenues that we can take that doesn't include direct policing and direct jailing?
Well, thank you. That was pretty lucky that you had seen that that Mark Lamont Hill interview there.
Yeah, I work with Mark on the Mumia campaign.
Which campaign?
Mumia Abu Jamal, the political prisoner. So he's been a long time supporter of Mumia, and so I try to follow stuff that he he says.
Yeah, no, I've been a fan of him since he got fired from CNN, I think, for
Oh
speaking.
yeah, from saying from the river.
Palestinian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my if we have time for one more question before we show the video is you mentioned earlier, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King and how he had a very sort of anti-imperialist message, and I remember that was something that was very eye-opening for me when I was kind of going through a radicalization process, was finding out just how much of MLK's message had been whitewashed from what I had been taught that he was about. So I guess my question to you is, why do you think they have made such an effort to whitewash that foreign policy, anti-imperialist aspect of MLK's legacy? I
mean, I figure it's the same reason why they exalted Obama, right? I feel that I think that the U.S. is very clear on the position Africans hold in this country, and I consider myself an African. I don't really say African American or Black or things like that, but that's a political decision. I understand that my liberation is tied to the liberation of Africa, but Africans in the U.S. I think the U.S. understands the positionality of Africans in the U.S. and how they can shift a politic, or they can shift the tide, right? So as I mentioned Dr. King, and I mentioned SNCC, and I mentioned even SNCC did a lot for anti-Zionism in this country. I know that people talk about Bayard Rustin a lot when they reference Dr. King, but they don't talk about Bayard Rustin being a part of the that there was a Black Zionist organization that was pushing for an Israel, and it was Bayard Rustin, and it was A. Philip Randolph, and it was a bunch of folks, because I think when you are in that Christian sphere, the idea of Israel gets complicated, gets confusing. So Israel becomes a chosen place, and the argument against that becomes more of a religious dogmatic thing than actually identifying settler colonialism. So when we look at the impact that SNCC had on even on that, identifying settler colonialism, you know, pushing back against Zionism, and we looked at the impact that Dr. King had with against the Vietnam War, which subsequently folks like to argue, which led to his death, right? Because when he was talking about uniting all the colors, that was not as big of an issue as getting directly in the way of U.S. imperialism, right? And we know that the point of U.S. imperialism is to spread Western hegemony, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a large part. Dr. King Assassination Day, April 4th, is the founding day of Black Alliance for Peace. Because we so strongly believe in the reiteration of the Black radical traditions of being anti-war and anti-imperialist that got muddled a lot during the Obama administration, that droned everywhere, that sanctioned everyone, that, you know, never pulled or backed out of war. We could look at Libya, for example. And not only is April 4th a significant date for because of Dr. King, but because of NATO. NATO was established in 1949, April 4th, and we are complete opposition to NATO. The EU-US NATO axis of domination, as we like to talk about it, especially where it concerns Africa. Libya was a NATO thing. So when we even talk about this Ukrainian situation, what's happening, and Ukraine being used as a proxy war for NATO to expand, we push back against that because we understand that an expansion of NATO is not good for the world. And we know that NATO is also trying to, NATO does not stay in the North Atlantic. Right? they have their tentacles in Africa. They're reaching out to Colombia, trying to bring Colombia in as a member. And Colombia, as Hugo Chavez famously said, is the Israel of Latin America. So we are involved in a lot of this pushback against US imperialism, the expansion of Western hegemony, and all the institutions that support that. Just as Dr. King.
Yes, thank you. Well, very well said. And unless looks like we have one more. We have one more question before we watch the video. And Drew Roth asked, I'd be interested to hear your views or BAP's views on the relationship between China and Africa.
BAP holds a position that China and Africa is no more detrimental to Africa than the entire NATO in Africa. Look at what France is doing in Africa. Nobody speaks about France. There's been 3 coups just this year in Guinea-Bissau, in Guinea, and in Burkina Faso. I mean, not Guinea-Bissau, in Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Mali. 3 coups. Those are all Francophone nations. They're all French-speaking nations. France has owns it. Like they spend France money, they speak French, they go to shop in French stores. If Africa was to find its independence today, the Eiffel Tower lights will shut off because that is how dependent France is. The same with the US. The US just passed a bill, the House just passed a bill to counter Russian malignment in Africa that's would be in opposition to the US's interests, which is basically them declaring war on African nations that would not condemn Russia full out. So for me, China does not have a military presence in 53 out of 54 nations like the US AFRICOM does. China does not interfere with their politics. China is actually, I mean, we can make criticisms about separate Chinese private industries and what they're doing, but I think what people do is confuse private companies and the Chinese government. And I think what people want to do because of xenophobia, which is the American way, is fixate on China without any interrogation of why are we all being directed to China, especially as the US increases its antagonisms towards China and Russia in a time where the world is looking towards multipolarity. And we look at all of these nations that are having relationships with China for the Belt Road Initiative, etc. And then you see the US is interfering with that directly, trying to, the America Competes Act even, to try to set up the NED, NED and USAID and all of these different different companies in Africa and in Latin America and in the Caribbean to curtail Chinese influence.
I see here he's got a comment I think he wants to make on it.
Yes.
Yeah, Erica, thank you for this presentation. I think it's the more of this perspective that we see, I think will be really helpful. The one question that I had, especially as someone who's been observing more of what's going on in East Africa and the dynamic there, I've noticed that it's and I've noticed this in that context and in a lot of other contexts in geopolitics these days is there seems to be more of and this is not, I don't want it to come off as a criticism, but it's just, like an observation. There seems to be sort of like I would describe it as a reflexive sort of reaction to, the US has X position, and therefore, the entity that's on the other on the other side. So perhaps if it's either China or Russia, the way to advance, this multipolarity that you describe would be to sort of say, okay, let them, no matter how perhaps malevolent their intent is also, to sort of say, let them, it's because the US has this position, their position is, is not as bad. And I'm wondering, is there is the position, or is the sort of the disposition to say, the US position is bad, and I totally agree with that. I always say US foreign policy kills, but at the same time, the Chinese policy is bad and the Russian policy is bad, and let's condemn all of it? Or it's to say, China hasn't done anything, adverse, because, there's, I would disagree with that, but like, what's the viewpoint?
Right. I think I think that is a red herring in a sense, because I think we always get squeezed into that. Not making a criticism about China and Russia, which I probably still won't do, does not mean that I don't have one. What it does mean is that it doesn't make sense for me to have one. I am not a citizen of those nations. I don't have any voice, and I shouldn't. And I think that is Western chauvinism, when we feel like we can dictate, or under the assumption that these people wouldn't understand the relationships that they have with China or the US or France, or they can't make their own decisions in that way. We can hold our criticisms, but our criticisms wouldn't mean much, especially to the people who have to live that material reality every day. And when we look at what they are trying to accomplish by breaking away from Western hegemony, then understandably, they would turn to Russia and China. Now, that's not for us to say, well, that's a bad move. We don't know if that's a bad move yet, because it hasn't happened yet. And also, people don't really name their issues per se. I'm not even gonna talk about Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah has bad politics. Trevor Noah says bad things about the even apartheid movement in South Africa. If you ever read his thing, Trevor Noah has bad liberal politics, so he shouldn't be involved in international things, especially when he doesn't talk about anything regarding Africa as an African, outside of to condemn China, especially not France, which is actively just got kicked out of Mali. So I don't think it's really a matter of, is it good, is it bad? Mia Mottley, who is the chair of CARICOM and the president, the leader of Barbados right now, I think she's a prime minister, she was asked a question about this, like, why would you be doing business with China? Don't you know this about China? And et cetera, et cetera. And what she said is, that it's real interesting that the only time people are asking them questions about how they are conducting their policies in their business is when they start to do business with people who are not the US, as if to say, we have no better sense, or that we are just going to walk ourselves right into a situation we can't get ourselves out of. And until these nations don't have the foot of US imperialism and Western imperialism on their neck, they can't really make free decision, you know what I'm saying? They would have to turn to a China, or they would have to turn to a Russia, because they are in impossible positions, especially when we look at their sanction. like when we look at Nicaragua and Venezuela, when we look at Eritrea and Ethiopia, like they have to make these kind of decisions and these kind of political moves and allyships because of how much pressure the West puts on them. So it's not to say that there's no criticism for Russia and China. It's to say that doesn't matter. And would it matter to those people if the criticisms are coming from us? Does it change the material reality for them? Does it better their circumstances? So that's the sort of questions that we on the left here, we need to ask ourselves.
Well, thank you, Erica. And we won't do any more questions because you said you got a hard stop time at 8:10.
Yeah,
That's
I'm supposed to be in
just enough
PE right
time.
now.
But there's
No,
just
it's
enough
fine.
time for the video. And my real quick thoughts on the discussion is, even if that's the case, China does exploitative infrastructure loan deals that then gets countries in debt trap. Even if that is, if we accept that premise as true, I would imagine a lot of people in those countries would view that as preferable to like a military occupation, which is kind of the US's style and form of imperialism abroad, and can be a lot probably a lot deadlier in a lot of ways. And then I also agree with what Erica said of at the end of the day, there can be criticisms or grievances with other countries, but at the end of the day, we pay taxes to the U.S. military, and that is what funds these human rights abuses and this upholding of other, authoritarian regimes across the world, which are only propped up and empowered because of our support. So really, and the leader of China, the leader of Russia, whatever, they have no obligation to listen to us because, as Erica said, we are not citizens in their country. So I think anything should be directed at the government that represents us, that we vote for, that our taxpayers, go to, and that we are ultimately complicit with. So that's why we should always reframe it back to the U.S. as people in the U.S., I think. But yes, so with no further ado, Karen, if you could please pull up that video and that slideshow. I'm sorry if you have to leave during the.
Is the video in the slideshow?
Yeah, I put a link to it, the YouTube video, and then we'll have to click it and it'll open up the new tab and we can watch it.
Okay, that's right. Okay, I see it.
Thank you.
The U.S. is birthed from savagery. Europeans committed genocide against native peoples and stole their land, all while kidnapping and enslaving native and African people to turn a profit. Now, over 400 years later, the United States is a massive empire. It has 800 military bases and at least a dozen colonies scattered across the globe. Ever since its founding, the U.S. has always been at war, and it's the only country in history to use nuclear weapons against people. At this very moment, the U.S. is engaged in at least 7 wars of occupation and regime change. The mission? To ensure U.S. businesses have access to land, resources, and cheap or slave labor. But the 1% also wages war against Black and colonized people in the U.S., just as they've done from the start. Police continue to murder, brutalize, and surveil Black people. Our communities are impoverished, starved of resources, and thrown in jail. All the while, police departments become more and more like occupying armies. And the military budget, well, it just keeps getting bigger. The Black Alliance for Peace was launched in 2017.
The Black Alliance for Peace, as an organization, committed to revitalizing the traditional anti-war positions of the Black community.
The United States is the worst abuser of human rights in the world. If you look at the invasions, the proxy wars, the sanctions.
The powers that be are seeing a threat to the status quo.
It does not matter whether the United States government agrees with Maduro and his policies, because 6 million Venezuelans wanted him to lead them. As a sovereign people, they have a right to determine their own direction and future.
Everyone has a place in this movement. We must be organized. If we want peace, we have to be willing to fight for it.
Our campaign is no compromise, no retreat. Defeat the war on African Black people in the U.S. and abroad. The campaign includes the demands to end police militarization, stop their training by the Israeli Defense Force, shut down AFRICOM, remove all U.S. military presence from Africa, defund the military, and close the 800 military bases around the world. Black people have always been the consciousness and change agents within this brutal regime. Now can be no different. We are in the heart of the empire, and we must remember our fight for liberation is connected to the liberation of Black, brown, and working class people everywhere. It is time for us to stand up to oppose U.S. war and murder and defeat the U.S., EU, NATO axis of domination. That is why the Black Alliance for Peace was founded. And that is why we need you.
Well, there we go. I think Erica had to hop off, but thank you to Erica and Black Alliance for Peace for, presenting to us, sharing about their group. I hope everybody found it interesting, learned something, or at the very least were exposed to a different perspective, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. But especially, the candidates, running for office, running for local office. I hope you learned something about how the local issues are connected to national and international issues. And I was going to respond to Joel's comment about NATO, but now's probably not the time for us to get into a NATO debate. We'll save that for another time. But to move on to the candidates.
As a Latin America who grew up under a dictatorship financed and sponsored and incentivized by the US, I've never felt any fear of Russian domination. I think most of the people in the entire world do not even have to fear Russian domination. But of course, some people of European descent have some grudge against Russia. I don't, and most of us in the southern part of the planet do not.
Yeah, thank you. And not to mention that Russia didn't even really exist when NATO was created. It was created to, I guess, contain the quote unquote expansion of the Soviet Union, which is no longer around, but for some reason NATO is still around. But again, that's the last of it. We're not going down this NATO rabbit hole. But yes, thank you for the comments, Eduardo. But to get to the candidates, and thank you everybody for waiting and being patient here. So just I want to get out some quick information about how the endorsement process is going to work, and then we will give the candidates all an opportunity to speak on that. So in terms of how our endorsement process works is, in case you're wondering if you're a voter. And real quick, Karen, could you jump ahead a couple slides? Because on one of those later slides, I do have a list of all the one with the red writing. Next one. Yep. Okay, so real quick. So in terms of who is the eligible voter, you had to have, paid dues or been voted in by May 2nd, 2 weeks in advance of today. So there the list of voting members. It's 27. Take a look at the slide. If you think that you should be on that list and you're not on that list, please let us know so that we can get that squared away. Make sure that we got your dues receipt if we were missing it for some reason. So yeah, make sure to see if you're on the list. If you think you should be on it and you're not on, let us know. The voting, you don't have to vote by midnight tonight. You have to vote by midnight tomorrow. So you do have a day to sort of read over the candidate questionnaires, think on what the candidates had to say tonight. So yeah, I just want to show the list of members, and yeah, if we could go back to that first slide. Thank you. Yeah, so those are the people who had either paid dues, been voted in by Monday, May 2nd, 2 weeks ago. The way that the bylaws work is the executive board produces a list of potential candidates to be voted on for endorsement for each office. We prepared that list, I think, as early as April 3rd. So that was before we even actually got the candidate questionnaire responses back, because we originally weren't planning on doing candidate questionnaires. That was kind of a last second decision. So we actually did not factor that in to putting together our list. And before I show the list, which I've already emailed and put out publicly, so most of you all should have probably already seen it. And then Huri or Megan, if you could please send Eduardo the link for dues. I'd appreciate that. But back to what I was saying. So before I show that list of potential endorsement people, it can be, if people feel that somebody was left off that shouldn't have been left off, or if people feel that someone's included that shouldn't be included, we can amend this list of potential candidates, and I'll change it on the election system real quick before we cast the votes. But that list can be amended with a 2/3 vote from members that are present here. Sorry to keep on making you switch around slides here, Mo, or I'm sorry, not Mo, Karen. But if you could please.
Which slide do you want me to go to now?
Yeah, the next slide, I think, is the one with, so this is our list of potential candidates to be voted on, and we have a Google form that we'll put in the chat in a second, which is how people can cast their votes for this. But again, after hearing from the candidates, if people want to amend this list, we can do so with the 2/3 vote. But the current and it's also, we don't have to endorse in a particular race, even if the executive board has proposed potential candidates. We have an option to abstain if we feel that we want to just stay out of a race completely. And so here's our list of candidates. And I also put a little marker to show who has returned our questionnaire, who has signed the No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge. How we and these markers are kind of related to these markers are related to how we put together this list and what criteria we used. I mean, it was easier for county council and state delegate because it's, there's a lot more issues for them to have stances on, and a lot of these people have longer public records. So from that, it was a lot easier to sort of base who we wanted to endorse. So we kind of just went with their voting record, particularly for incumbents, and also, this wasn't the sole determinant, but this did play a big factor of who signed the No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge. So that was a big factor. So we went with Liz Walsh in District 1, or abstain. County Council in District 4, Deb Jung for County Council in District 4, abstain. District 5 County Council, we went with Joan Pontius or abstain. County Executive, as I said, we went with Harry Dunbar or abstain. Again, we will have all the candidates here will have a chance to speak. But State Delegate in 9A, there's only 2 open slots, but we put all 3 of the Democrats on there: Steve Bolin, Chao, Natalie Ziegler, or abstain. But I do want to note that Natalie Ziegler has not signed the No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge, whereas both Chao and Steve Bolin have signed the No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge. On top of that, Natalie Ziegler did not fill out the PDHC questionnaire. So we have no responses to see her exact stances on issues, where Steve and Chao both did fill out the questionnaire. And Steve and Chao, for people who have been to multiple of these meetings, know that Steve and Chao have, both been pretty long time supporters of this club, more so than most other candidates in the county. And Steve and his wife Linda are even actual members of the club. But again, between Steve, Chao, and Natalie, you can only vote for up to 2 of them, or vote to abstain, or only vote for 1 or no of them. State Delegate District 13, we went with, we put incumbents Vanessa Atterbury and Jen Terrasa. Of course, there's 3 slots, but we felt only 2 candidates came close enough to our values to even be considered, though again, we can amend that. And Board of Education was a little bit harder because a lot of these candidates are new. We didn't have the questionnaire responses at the time. They don't have as much of a long public record. So we kind of just went based on who, of the candidates have signed the no developer donation campaign pledge. So that's Lin Feng Chen, Julie Hotopp, Monique Richards, and Meg Ricks, all of which, in addition to signing the no developer donation campaign pledge, also returned our questionnaire, except for Lin Feng Chen. He did not do our questionnaire. Dan Newberger did, but he is not on our list, and Dan also did not sign the no developer donation campaign pledge either. And again, I believe it's up to 4 candidates who will win and go on to the general election for Board of Education. We have 4 candidates listed, but you'll see it lets you vote for up to 4, but you don't have to vote for 4. If you only want to vote for 1 of these 4, 2 of these 4, 3 of these 4, 4 of these 4, or none of these 4, that is an option as well. And last but not least, we have Circuit Court Judge Stephanie Porter, who did not sign the pledge, but she did fill out the questionnaire, and she was even one of the people asking, can candidates speak at this meeting tonight? But then she ended up, something came up and she wasn't able to make it. But she did return our questionnaire. So those are the candidates listed. Again, this is susceptible to change. But with a 2/3 vote from membership, if they'd like. And I just realized I probably should have went ahead and put the link to the candidate questionnaire responses in the chat. So I will do that now if people want to. But it's also in the email, if you're on our email list, and also in the Facebook event description as well. You should be able to go and see the candidate questionnaire responses, but I will put them in here as well so that people can make as informed a decision as possible. And again, there are candidates who filled out our questionnaire that are not on our current list of potential endorsement candidates. So let me I tried to just copy and paste it. Why didn't it work? Let me try now. Okay. If somebody else from the executive board could please try to do that right now. Please. You just log into the Google Drive, and it's or actually no, anybody can just go on the Facebook event, copy and paste it from the Facebook event descriptions, and please put it in the chat. So I'd appreciate that if somebody could do that, please, Curie or someone. Okay, so that is that. And then is there anything else that I need to mention before we go ahead and hear from the candidates?
You guys stop sharing because I'm looking for that email that you sent.
That's okay. Yeah, I meant somebody besides you or me as the people who have to talk and share. Yeah.
Okay,
but thank
well,
you,
if someone else
Karen.
can grab it then, that would be great.
Yes, but I'll do it while the candidates are talking, actually. But so I just put in the link to the Google forum, which is where people will be able to cast their votes. If you vote and you're not a member, we're going to see it because we have the email address. So we're just going to discard your vote. So please, again, only vote if you are on that list that we sent out earlier. But before we go ahead and open the floor to potential amendments to the endorsement list. I want to now give candidates the opportunity to speak their piece and make their case to our audience. And I think we'll start with Dr. Julie Hotopp, mainly just because I actually don't even know if she wants our endorsement, but nonetheless, we will give her an opportunity to speak. And please, be clear with us. Julie, if you think that our endorsement would hurt you, and like you're saying like, hey, I appreciate that you guys are supportive, but like I literally don't want your endorsement because I think it'll hurt. Please make that clear so that we know not to vote for you even if we want to, because we do have something in our bylaws that we can still do things to support candidates even if they haven't been endorsed. So
let me ask you a question. Like, how long do you want us to speak for? Because I could speak for hours, and I'm pretty sure you don't want that.
Yeah,
Do you have a time
definitely not
limit?
hours. Yeah, I would say like, try to keep no more than 2 minutes per candidate. I would say, just because it's already been a long meeting, and I don't want us to be here we have a thing with long meetings here. So yes, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for hosting us all today. I'll get to the point Jake was making at the end, so hold on for a second. So I'm running for Board of Education because of my passion for education, particularly science education. I'm a scientist and professor with a lifelong dedication to educating the next generation of science leaders and encouraging STEM experiences and careers. I'm the mother of an 8th grader at Wild Lake Middle School and a 1st grader at Bryant Woods Elementary School. I'm running for the Board of Education because I want to ensure that Howard County maintains the highest quality education system. We need to ensure that every student has the best opportunity to learn and succeed in life. We currently don't have enough capacity, and development continues. We need new schools so that every child has a seat in a brick and mortar classroom instead of affordable. Increased capacity would greatly diminish the need for redistricting. And while we should not have schools with concentrations of poverty, we need the county council to use zoning and smart development to fix that problem. So the school system and children don't have to fix it with redistricting at the end. We need appropriate school start times that align with our children's biological clocks. We have too many issues with safety and bullying in our schools, affecting far too many children and families, leaving far too many kids out of school right now. We need to have safe and bully-free schools and support all students. We need to eliminate discrimination and bias in our schools. We need to address the learning loss that happened during the pandemic while ensuring that we retain the highest quality teachers and staff. To this end, I would recommend that we use Recovery Act money to reduce class sizes so teachers can do what they do best, which is teach our children and address this learning loss. I am running to advocate and affect changes in these areas. I want to ensure that this work is done with excellence, integrity, and transparency and without outside influence. So I will not take developer or dark money donations, as you guys all know, but I also do not have a political party affiliation. So I'm unaffiliated and will not take any money or endorsements from a political party. I don't know where that puts me with respect to this, but I wanted to still be here. I didn't want to snub you guys or anything. I don't quite know what's going on with the Democratic Party in Howard County. And I don't know kind of what you guys' place is with all of that. So I might need more information if you were to vote for me about whether or not I could actually accept an endorsement. So you guys might know that better, but that's kind of where I stand right now. I've just seen too much developer money in the parties. And so I made that decision early on that it was important to me.
Yeah. And just to speak on that real quick, I mean, we have in our bylaws that, nobody has to be a registered Democrat for us to endorse. So it's more about, I think, what the candidate wants. If the candidate thinks that this endorsement would be harmful to me, then I think we should not endorse. But if the candidate aligns with our values and wants our endorsement, I think we should do it. You just have to make the assessment of how will voters perceive either a progressive club supporting you or a Democratic club supporting you, but just to be very explicitly clear on what the situation with the local Democratic Party is, and more importantly, where we are on that is. I mean, we were you know, it's several groups that sponsored the No Developer Donation Campaign pledge, but it really was kind of, it came from progressive Democrats of Howard County originally. We have a lot of the same grievances that you just named with the local Democratic Party, mainly their allegiances to the development lobby. And that's why many of us, including myself, are literally running a slate for Democratic Central Committee, because we don't like the Republican Party. We don't like the current Democratic Party, but we're not going to form a third party most likely. So our mindset is we need to take over the Democratic Party back in the hands of the people and out of developer money. And I think that can be an attractive message to voters who hear the message, but there's also the thing of like, maybe not all voters will hear that and they'll just see Democrat, not know any of the details and be turned off. So that's your assessment to make, Julie, and you should probably think on it. And before this meeting ends, if you want to come back with a more yes or no answer, yes, I would still like to be considered, or no, I would not like to be considered.
I think something I need, which I couldn't find when I was looking for it, and I see a lot of names here of people that I often really agree with, like Hyru. Like, I really love the things you write. So anyway, and I'm not sure I pronounced your name right. I kind of need to know more. Like, I don't know if you guys, like, do you consider yourself a political party? I don't think.
I mean, we're technically anybody can just start a club and say we're the Democrats of blank. So we haven't gotten an official charter from the Maryland State Democratic Party. We're not even, we filed at one point to be a nonprofit. We haven't officially done that yet. So we're still a nebulous thing, but I mean, obviously we identify as Democrats or the Democratic Party. But if you ask the local party, is PDHC a part of you guys, they would probably say no, I would guess.
Okay, so you would consider yourselves more a club?
We're a club, and we're trying to shape the local Democratic Party into what we want it to be, and actually standing up for voters.
Yeah, Julie. So I think so for example, the Columbia Democratic Club is doing an endorsement, and I would count that more of a Democratic endorsement. At least, you know, just from my point of view, we're, you know, as Jake mentioned, our bylaws says that, you know, you don't have to be a registered Democrat. You don't, you know, it's to be a member. And at the same time, I also, you know, based on your response to the questionnaire, you know, you want I read that, you know, your preference is to be to run a nonpartisan campaign. And so to that extent, it's as Jake mentioned, is definitely something you would have to weigh whether this would imply a nonpartisan endorsement or not.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm like, you guys are definitely in that gray area, and sorry to consume so much of everybody's time on that. But I think it's an important, but I also do feel like what you guys are doing is incredibly important, and I am really grateful for all of you guys for doing it. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Maybe even if they do end up still endorsing you, we can reach out and be like, hey, do you not want us to publish this? And we'll work that out if it comes.
Thank you.
Think on it more. Yeah. But okay. Yeah. And sorry to the candidates for taking up even more time, but thank you for that. So I guess since we started with Board of Education, we'll continue with Board of Education. I see we got another doctor Board of Education candidate here, Dr. Monique Richards, if you're available.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Well, I won't take up very much of your time. I appreciate the honor of being invited, and I do want your endorsement. My values align with those of the HOCO Progressive Club, and I will just tell you a little bit about myself. My commitment to education began and was instilled in me by my parents, who migrated to this country from Jamaica in the late 1960s. And they came for better opportunities, which are available to everyone who comes to this country legally, obviously. But it's amazing to me that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is not yet 60 years old. And that is the only time when discrimination based on race, religion, gender, sex, and national origin was outlawed. And so just a little bit about myself. I'm from New Jersey. I was raised in Newark, New Jersey in a 2-parent household. And I went on to graduate from high school, product of public education. And then I pursued my Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry at Howard University. So I am also a scientist. I worked as a chemist in the public and private sector before moving on to obtain my doctorate in pharmacy. And so I am a pharmacist and I own my own business and very used to wearing multiple hats. I'm also the wife of 1 husband and I have 3 children. Their ages are 2, 8, and 16. Why am I running for the Board of Education? Here's why. I am a fierce advocate for my children. And I had a light bulb moment occur in February of this year after I addressed an issue that came up at my son's school. He's in 2nd grade. And I realized that not all children have the advocacy in their parents or caregivers that I'm able to provide for my children, and that I can be someone on the board who does advocate for those children who are not able to get that advocacy because of circumstances not in the control of their parents. And so I do ask for your vote and your endorsement, and please review my responses to the survey questions, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Monique Richards. Next we have, do we have any other Board of Ed candidates on here? Looks like not. Looks like not. Okay, then I guess we will go to, because he seemed eager to talk to us earlier, and that is Harry Dunbar for County Executive. You with us, Harry?
Yes, I am. I'm with you.
Hello.
I'm a retired federal employee. My background with the federal government is human resource and organization management, 33 years. Howard County government needs to be reorganized. Certain parts of it more than other parts of it. I have raised 2 kids here in Columbia, Maryland, via the Howard County Public Schools. The schools aren't what they used to be. They aren't as well managed or is as good as they were. You can't have schools with 140% capacity in them and produce quality first-rate students today as were created in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s when my kids were in Howard County Public Schools. I have a history of struggling against developers and being bought by developers. The present administration is in the pocket of developers. I encourage you to look at HOCOwatchdogs.com to get some idea as to the corruption that exists in Howard County government today. And I am the complete opposite of that. What's going on today, how our government is functioning, how it's being run. And I'm disappointed that so many of our elected officials are in the pocket of developers. And I encourage you to verify what I'm telling you And all you have to do is go and look at their websites at the state level in terms of the contributions, the donations that they have collected. I'm going to be brief and say thank you. I hope that you can vote and support my efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry, and definitely you know, double what he said about checking out the Hoco Watchdogs blog. And thank you, Eduardo, for linking it in the chat. But yeah, I mean, that blogger's done a lot of really good investigative journalism, quite frankly, exposing the county executive's corruption, nepotism, and also even with members of the current Central Committee. There's been that several members of the current Central Committee have been in the news for, I guess, because they both work for him in the county capacity and the campaign capacity. There have been MPI, Maryland Public Information Act requests showing people affiliated with his campaign getting very generous pay raises, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in just a couple years sometimes. And man, I would like to get those pay raises. So thank you here, Harry, for stepping up and running. And yeah, check out that blog. Okay, so that is county executive, and I'm wondering, is it just state delegate 9A that we have left? I think it might be, yeah, it looks like it. So I guess we have 2 candidates from 9A, again, 3 candidates on the potential endorsement list. 2 of the 3 are here. And so, and 2 of the 3 that are here have both signed the No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge, and both have filled out our questionnaire, and that is Steve Bolin and Chao Wu. Believe Chao Wu also a doctor, by the way. Steve, correct me if you're a doctor, but I guess we will go ahead and do it. Makes sense to do alphabetical order, maybe. So if we could start with Steve Bolin.
So thanks, Jake. I am a doctor also, by the way, but so I'd like to offer Dr. Wu, because we've been doing a lot of these forums and they all go alphabetical. So I can go first, but Dr. Wu, if you want to go first this time.
Steve, you go first.
Okay, thank you very much. So if anybody who saw any of the forums last week, especially the African American Coalition of Howard County, will know that some of the things I've already talked about. And one of the reasons why I'm running for state delegate, because I think we need to hold to our promises to build a better, brighter, more equitable future for Maryland. And that means we need to keep our promise to women to defend their right to choose. We need to keep our promise to end the cycle of generational wealth inequality, because people have been waiting too long for that. We need to keep our promise to our children to build a world-class education system, or give them the world-class education that they deserve to compete in today's global marketplace. We need to keep our promise to fight climate change. It is not tomorrow, it's not in the future, it's happening right now. And I want to do that by building a renewable, clean energy, jobs building economy. It's a lot with electric vehicles. And we also need to keep our promise to help hardworking families. Now, I grew up in a blue collar working class neighborhood outside Detroit, Michigan. And as I said at the AACHC forum last week or Saturday, that I grew up in one of those, what some people might describe as an underserved neighborhood. And so I know what it's like growing up in neighborhoods like that. And hardworking families have struggled too long, and we need to start helping those hardworking families, especially now with inflation the way it is. And by golly, we've started seeing this on the news, and a lot of people who have families know this, that this is the United States of America, this is Maryland. We ought to make sure that parents can get formula for their infants. There's no reason why we have this issue going on around here. So I'm running because I want to make sure that we hold to our promises. We've made a lot of promises to our citizens, and we need to make sure we uphold those promises. So Steve Walden, I'm running for state delegate in District 9A. And I also want to make one more comment, that if I get elected, I plan to be a delegate for all of my constituents. And what I mean by that is I plan to listen to all of my constituents. Now, I know that there's been some things here and there, some ripples in the road with this group and other groups and stuff like that, but you will all be my constituents. I plan to listen to everybody. Now, we may not agree on things, And I may make decisions sometimes that maybe you don't agree with, but you can always come talk to me. You can always try to make me figure out some better way to do something. And I will always listen to everybody in my elected, in my district. So that's one thing I promise. All right. So this is Steve Ball, and running for Maryland State Delegate in District 9A. Over to you, Dr. Wu.
Thank you. It's kind of funny. We have two doctors from 9A, right? So, so my name is Chao, and I graduated from University of Maryland with a PhD from electrical and computer engineering. So I was elected school board in 2018, countywide. This is my last year on school board. The reason I was running for delegate because I feel there's a need for me, use my experience learned from school board and a lot of the issues countywide, and bring that to the state level and come back to help school system. I think I have the first-hand experience on what our education has experiencing during the last 4 years and have worked hard, really hard to find solutions as a school board member and the board chair. I really want to address the issues at the state level and support our teachers and students and their family. Second point, I would say, is really I would have witnessed not a well-planned development, which is squeezed really limited resources from the county. So I would like to help present some solutions from the state level to address the overall development issue. We should find a balanced growth with the consideration of jobs, schools, roads, hospitals, fire station, and many other infrastructure needs. Sorry, an enhanced APFO, we call it adequate public facility audience, which is something we needed. So before I was elected school board, actually I stayed on the Columbia Association board for several years. At that time, our county council member, not state delegate, Terrasa, right? She proposed the APFO amendment said, okay, we want to have universal and affordable housing for new large development. And like 15% universal instead, like a developer can pay money to not build affordable housing. And I was supporting her at that time. Unfortunately, even over like 6 years past, we have not made any progress in that front. I think that's something we really need to, in order to build affordable housing, we shouldn't concentrate all the affordable housing in one place. That is not helpful. Then the county will come back, ask the school board to do redistribution, say you need to relieve it and deconcentrate. That's the job, very difficult for school board. I have the first experience of that. There's no way the county board, school board can address the issue which the county council should help, should dedicate, right? The third point I would say, transportation improvement and human health issues. Beyond the COVID, we have many other health issues, asthma, lead in the water, cancer with potential link to environmental hazard, or other major concerns for me. I will work to propose legislations for better transportation, a safe environment, and safe drinking water. For transportation part, I would say a better, less congested transportation is a road to social mobility, because a lot of people actually try to find jobs around. And however, because of transportation constraint, they were not able to really commute to places where have good job, good paying job. I think by improving the efficiency of transportation, we actually offer families social mobility. People always talk about it. Then I think lead in the water is a big concern as well. And there's no safe lead level in the water for children's development. We really need to really have a safe water in that. And then there's some cancer related to environmental hazard. That's the environmental protection part. I feel strongly about that. I think we really work to enhance that. And that's really my priorities based on my experience and my vision for Maryland. I'm looking forward to your support. The other final word I would say, this club is really brought up a lot of great ideas, whether other clubs are not talking about it, or a lot of media will not cover, right? I think the world is very diverse and it's multifold. And sometimes a lot of mainstream media forget that multifold. They just focus on their perspective. Didn't think about other people's perspective, where sometimes other perspectives are very important to help people understand the dynamics and the complexity of the problem. I think the early discussion in Africa, I really love that. Thanks for sharing that. And just ending my talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you, both Dr. Steve Bowen and Dr. Chao Wu. And yeah, I like to think we're kind of outsiders with this club, trying to grow our influence, and certainly happy to support any other candidates who don't quite fit into that traditional Democratic Party box of this is what you have to be. So I think that might.
Can I address, make a comment about one of the candidates that's running for delegate? Would that be appropriate?
Are they here? Is the candidate here?
Yes, the candidate has spoken.
Please try to keep it respectful. I would say.
Okay.
Please try to keep it.
I am concerned about the Progressive Club supporting Bolden. He is chairman of the he's chairman of the Ellicott City and Western Howard County Democratic Club. And they have voted to support Calvin Ball. And I don't understand how a Democratic club could support Calvin Ball based on his corrupt administration. In addition, I'm wondering how publicly that's going to look. People know that Calvin Ball has run a corrupt administration. And here we are, as progressives, maybe endorsing the chairman of that club. In addition, I just saw today, or maybe it was yesterday, where that same club has endorsed for governor the controller who 4 years ago, as a Democrat, helped elect a Republican, maybe that was 8 years ago, helped elect a Republican that has done the state of Maryland more harm than good. I'm just making these comments so that people are aware of what the context, more what, in regards to Mr. Bolden. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll respond to that, and then Steve, if you want to speak on that too, that's fine. But I do want to correct you, Harry. Steve is not the chairman or the president of the Ellicott City Dem Club. I believe he is the vice president. If you want to hold him responsible for everything the Ellicott City Dem Club has done, you are welcome to do that, though I don't know.
The president has resigned.
Oh, did he?
He's stepping up. He's resigned or will be resigning at the end of this month.
I didn't
Can I
know
address?
that.
Can I address?
Yeah. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah. So, Mr. Dunbar, really, I really do appreciate your comments. That they are very thoughtful comments, and they are points that this club needs to consider for sure. James, I am the vice president of the Ellicott City and Western Howard Democratic Club. I'm not the president. We have our elections for new officers in June. James has decided not to rerun for president. So until June, he's still the president. I have decided not to rerun for vice president because it's not something I want to be doing right now. I've got other things I want to be doing. Mr. Dunbar is correct that our club did endorse Peter Franchot. Our memberships vote on that thing. Some people vote for, some people vote against. But Mr. Dunbar's right to bring up all this. I don't have anything to hide. And people have to vote their consciences. And just like when I'm running for state delegate and I go knock on doors and I talk to people, the same thing. I put my literature, people can see where I stand, people can go to my Facebook page, people can go to my website. And Mr. Dunbar, thank you for bringing these comments up, because I really do want people to know where I stand, because one of the things, and maybe you've got the same similar experiences I've got, but I really get tired of politicians telling us one thing before they're elected or being very ambiguous about where they stand before they get elected. Then after we elect them, they do something, we get disappointed. So, you know, I am who I am. I've got my policy statements out there. I belong to the clubs that I belong to. And, you know, people have to make an evaluation based on that. If it's in line with this club's, you know, tenets, fine. If it's not, then, and Mr. Dunbar's right, you guys have to do what's right for your club too. And you know, I can't dispute any of that, but I'm just saying that, you know, I do plan to listen to people. I do want to reach out to people. That's why I'm here. I'm a member of this club, and that's why I'm reaching out to you, because I don't feel like I can just serve one part of the population and not another part of the population. So, well, thank you for the comments. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Harry. I do, you know, that is one thing I like about this club, is that we can have, you know, kind of uncomfortable disagreements or conversations in a respectful, diplomatic manner. So, you know, I want club members to be able to feel comfortable, you know, expressing their, you know, concerns or whatever. So thank you for addressing that, Steve. Thank you for the comments, Harry. I think that's all the candidates that we have. I can put the link to the vote again, the link to the Google form to vote again. But again, keep in mind that you don't have to vote by midnight tonight. You have to vote by midnight tomorrow if you want to vote in the first place. And to address Francis's question of, you know, are there you know, candidate questionnaire responses? Yes, there are. For whatever reason, and yeah, see you, Dr. Wu. Thank you for joining us. We're wrapping up right now anyway. So, you know, to answer Francis's question, it for some reason would not let me copy and paste the links into the Zoom chat. But I did email on the PDHC email list. I did email out all the questionnaire responses today. It is in our Facebook event description. And I was sharing that around in all the different Facebook groups today. Maybe we'll still do it in a standalone Facebook post so more people see it and spread it. And I can also talk with Megan about maybe getting them on our website so they're publicly available. Though I know Megan is has a lot on her hands with the various projects we're involved in. So we'll see what we can do there. But thank you again for all the candidates coming and speaking to us. Thank you for those of you who signed the pledge for signing the pledge. Thank you for filling out the questionnaire. I think that's basically the meeting. I think the last slide is just feedback, you know, for, you know, if anybody wants to, suggestions for things they want to see in the future at PDHC meetings, or ways we could make the club better, either during the meetings or even things we do between the meetings. Now's the time before we adjourn.
Hey, yeah, Jake, did you mention, we had told Joan that we would just do a shout out that she's looking for volunteers to help. She's kicking her as she kicks off her campaign. I mean, I know we're gonna get that question answered from Mo, but she does need volunteers. She needs as much help as she can get.
Yeah, good point. Duly noted. She is the only Democrat in that race. Oh, good question about the League of Women Voters. I forgot to get a hold of them today, Mel, so I can get an answer about that. But yeah, Joan, we'll make sure to get this. We'll make sure to email out the PowerPoint as well, so that you know, people have it and they have access to all the things that are hyperlinked in there. But in there we did. I think I put in Joan's website. I'll put it in the chat here. But JoanPontius.com. Again, she has to qualify for Citizens Election Fund by June 4th. Just a couple weeks, so please donate at the very least if, you know, you don't want David Youngman in there. You know, she's not an endorsed candidate, you know, at this point, though again, our bylaws allow us to still be supportive of non-endorsed candidates. But so yeah, thank you for that, Karen. Other than that, are we any last comments before we adjourn?
Just to make it clear that I already donated for Joan, though I have some things to clarify with her, but I already donated for her position.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And yeah, I yeah, it probably is worth a conversation with Joan about that, just because I do truly believe that her disagreements with the mosque have nothing to do with their faith, and it's purely about the lighting of it. And but for her sake of her campaign, she needs to make that more than clear to the mosque, because I do think that that is a community that she should be supporting and could be very supportive of her against a council member who has not been supportive of them. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I certainly want
Yeah, the
her to
zoning
put that
issue
up too.
that I'm telling you, Jake, if you go on the Route 108 and Guilford in the corner, there is a church, St. John's Church, that's also in the farmland. And we all support the church and we go there for many occasions.
Yeah, and it is a weird thing. It's a very uncomfortable thing if a religious institution is not compliant or is allegedly not compliant, because then it's like, yeah, it kind of looks not very good if you try to crack down on them. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that if it was a church where she lives, she would be making the exact same complaint if they had the exact same lighting. But yeah, I see what you're saying. But thank you, everybody, for I know it was another long meeting, but we'll get the recording, we'll get the PowerPoint out. But thank you, and I guess we will see you next meeting. I guess I will motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 All opposed, nay? All right, we're good. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, all the candidates. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting.